Okay, so thank you first of all for agreeing to be my guest composer of the month. And this is the first time that I've recorded an interview, so I'm really, really grateful to have you talking with me. And well, I'm really excited. So just to give a bit of context for viewers, particularly in the UK who may be watching this, I first encountered your music because one of your pieces, Blessed Be, was published as part of Multitude of Voices in the third volume. And I really loved the piece because it has this wonderful interaction between the beat provided by the walking stick and the playful rhythm surrounding it, and a lovely blend of imitative counterpoint and this lovely clarity and simplicity of harmonic style. And the freshness and life of the piece greatly attracted me. And it's broadly in lines with what I'm trying to achieve in my own compositional style. And I then went ahead and delved into your music and absolutely fell in love with it. And please tell me more, really.
Well, I first of all, I thank you so much. And it's interesting because that Blessed Be piece is people are doing it all over the place, And I just got back from being the conductor for the Minnesota All-State Choir, the mixed choir. And so it here, and they may have this similar thing in the UK, but every state has an all-state choir. So these kids audition and they're all high school age,
Right.
And, uh, and I was the first person in the history of these gatherings, of which there are many, that I did my whole thing with them, and we did like 9 hours rehearsal every day.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
And there was no paper, so everything was done in the traditional, and they've never had that. And so we did some of my music, and some of them have done Blessed Be, but what a lot of people don't, the pounding stick, which is in that piece, that is a very simplified rhythm of what it is because most people can't do it. So I'm going to show you what the real rhythm is like.
Great.
And it comes from the Gullah South Sea Islands of the United States, which has a stick pounding tradition, around South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And the people, they're called the Gullah people or the Gullah Geechee people, which is one of my specialties. I write pieces that feature a cappella singing and pounding. So, I think in the piece, it's simplified to this, blessed be, but the real rhythm is this. Blessed be the tree of life that dwells within you and me. That is really what, but it's simplified, but that is really what it is. But a lot of people can't do that and sing at the same time.
Right, I see. And is it allowable for one person to take over the stick without singing?
Yeah, right. But the whole so to have that so that you get that, so you could either do it with stick or stomping. Blessed be the tree of, so you have motion. That's the whole thing with me about motion and pushing of that rhythm. But that was the rhythmic basis of the piece for me was this. Blessed be the tree of life that dwells within you and me. Blessed be the tree of life. So that was the rhythm that gave birth to the piece. So now you know.
Great, thank you so much about that. And the other thing that I found really appealing was just the harmonic style as well, because in a lot of contemporary classical music, the trend is to take diatonic harmony and then add dissonance to it. And there are some ninths and seconds and similar sonorities in your piece, but there's also many pure triads, even open fifths, if I'm not mistaken. And I find that clarity really appealing. Please, would you tell me a little bit more about the background to that? How did you arrive at such a style?
Well, it's funny. I write a lot of different kinds of music, and I it's and a lot of things come to me on the spot.
Right?
Um, and so what people do now is whenever I'm doing a sing or something where I'm just bringing up, they just record because they never know what's going to come out of me. And I did this at the big conference just in Minnesota, and I had my kids. I had like 90 kids, 100 kids in the choir, and then there's a men's choir and a women's choir. So these are all just master singers, and we were doing like a little exchange concert, and I did a whole thing, made a whole piece on the spot. And the people in the audience who are used to having this were like saying, "Oh my gosh, how long did they work on that?" I said, "Well, we just did it right now." And they were like, "Wait, what?" And so my mind is like that. And in my other pieces, probably "Blessed Be" is the most. It doesn't have the dissonances that I write in a lot of my other pieces,
Hmm.
but I wanted it to have this joyousness in it, you know. So when people are singing it, that they have this, it has this feeling in your body. I like to write things uh, that have a certain kind of energy to them that is a full body experience. That's a lot of my thing. And when I was working with these youth here, by the end of the week, I said, "How does it feel for you to sing with your whole body? For you to be manifesting that music?" So I like when I write things, that there's sort of that there's a textural thing that's happening, not just what you're singing, but the rhythmic thing, but what is happening to you physically when you're singing the music.
Right. Oh, I love that. Um, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I come from the Western choral tradition, and
Mhm,
a lot of our music making is based on sight reading. And
mhm,
often it's very pretty, very accurate, but there's a certain distance between performer and hearer, and indeed between the performer and the music itself. And
mhm,
the style of music that you're describing sounds as if it is internal at a much deeper level and builds a much more profound connection
mhm.
and a much more inclusive connection with the hearer. And I wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about the background of Gullah music in particular, because I've watched a few documentaries about it, and I, it's completely eye-opening and humbling for me to learn about this history that I was largely ignorant of. And I would love for you to tell me and whoever may be watching this more about that tradition, please.
Well, like I said, it comes from the Gullah South Sea Islands of the United States.
Yeah,
And I've written two choral pieces, one called Freedom Land,
right,
that is about the journey on the Underground Railroad, which was,
right.
part of our history here in the United States. And so it is about that journey, and it has three movements in it, and it's a stick piece, all a cappella, and really in a very traditional way, because in Gullah music, it is more call and response, which is very African in that way. But the people who were stolen, uh,
Mm,
they were stolen from different parts of West Africa and brought to these islands. They were able to keep a lot more of their African traditions because they were isolated on these islands. And so, and the main crops there were rice and indigo. So the people that were stolen from around Sierra Leone and all, they were experts in growing rice. So they were stolen and brought there. And all of the quarters, now you'll hear me refer to people who were stolen as enslaved. So they were enslaved Africans as opposed to being slaves, because slavery was their condition, not who they were. So I will, you'll hear me refer to that, refer to them as enslaved as opposed to being slaves. And so all of the quarters, all of the housing was up on stilts because they were on islands. And so drums taken away, they would take broom handles and hoe handles and pound on the floor. And so, and it's a particular rhythm that has this, there's that rhythm that you hear on this with the stick. It's this one. That is the rhythm. But one of the things that is important about that is that your feet are doing a different thing. So I think can you hear the feet? Can you hear that?
Yeah.
So that is part of the rhythm. And it's like, and when you add the stick rhythm, it gives a little flavor like this. And in the tradition, when you have stick pounders, you have foot stompers, you have hand clappers, you have dancers, and everybody sings and claps and all that. And as the spirit lifts them, the rhythm gets faster. And so there's this great uniting factor that happens. So I'm the only person that writes pieces. The most people I've had pounding at one time is 250. So normally it's 1 or 2 pounders, but when you have that kind of kinetic energy, so you have wood on wood, people moving in the same direction, and the sound radiates from the performance area into the whole audience, and the whole place becomes rhythmically and heart lined up. And so you create this, it's kind of like, to me, and this is part of my whole philosophy in terms of singing and music and all of that, is that, you know, that theory about how trees have a thing that feeds to trees hundreds and thousands of miles away. It's the same thing happened to me. That's what I want when my music is happening and people are singing it and we're doing it together communally. That there is that. So when you put that kind of conscious thought into what you're writing, what you're singing along with that rhythm, and realizing that it's radiating out and it's making connections. Because to me, when people come to a concert or whatever, they should leave feeling bigger than when they came in. They should feel more connected. They don't need to know the person's name next to them, but what is in our true hearts and our humanity is a language we all know. And that to me is part of the power of music and song. And so I want people to be drawn in, so that they have a compulsion to want to be a part of it. And, you know, I always have a thing, if I'm writing my music, to me, there's 5 sections. You have S, A, T, B, the audience. So, yeah, so they should be woven into the piece and the energy.
Yeah, that I think is a beautiful explanation, because in my own life, when a performance, in the days that I was singing, and in my own life, my most profound, most beautiful experiences have been only fleeting, but when suddenly there's been this kind of connection, this numinous connection between people, and a sense that we were communicating on a much more spiritual level and connecting together in a way that cannot be expressed in words.
Exactly.
And every now and again, when I've been on song, I felt as if music was communicating directly with God, touching the spirit. And everything you're telling me seems to approach this music in a way that in the sort of European tradition we only ever experience in a fleeting fashion, and I find it profoundly moving, and it's something that is influencing my own compositional practice, and I just want to learn as much as possible, and I want to share this music more, and yeah, that's all I can think to say right now. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, you were telling me about threshold singing the last time we spoke, and
Yeah.
I wondered if you could perhaps elaborate a little bit more on that, please.
Right. Well, it's the Threshold Choir movement was founded by a woman named Kate Munger,
Right,
who lives not very far from me here. I live in California, in Oakland, California, and she lives in Inverness.
right.
Um, and I guess Threshold's been around now about 25 years.
Uh-huh.
And it began very simply. She had a very dear friend who was very sick, and she was visiting him in the hospital. And he was really, really agitated. And the only thing she could think of to do was sing. And she sang one song for 2 hours. And it just completely calmed him down. And then it planted the seed about Threshold Choir. And so I am a member at large. And so I work with all of the threshold choirs. And most of the threshold choirs, of which there are 250 or 60 of them now around the world,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first songs they learn is a song I wrote called Sending You Light.
Right.
So that's one of the first songs that they learn. So I've written a few songs. I sent you one. I sent you Bright Blue Sky.
Yes, I loved that. I thought that was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. And that's a song that's sung at memorials and for Threshold. And yeah, so there's so many. I write different kinds of music, but to me, all those things are really connected. And Threshold singing, the first funeral that I ever sung at, I wrote a song and I sang it at my mother's funeral when I was 19. And she died in August. I had just turned 19 in June.
Mm.
So it was my first time of singing in that way. And I wrote the song the night before she died. I knew she was going to die. And then I sang it at her funeral. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and I'm the one that could do it. And it's what I do. And then I had the similar experience. And this August 8th is the anniversary of my mother's death. August 22nd is the anniversary of my sister's death. And so when Drina, my sister, I sat up with her for 5 nights and 6 days, and I sang to her until she took her last breath. That's what I did. And singing and songs. And there's an album I have called In the Mother House that is dedicated to her. That's all songs for comfort and solace. And so that's a whole nother way of writing. And, some of the songs, they might have 2 lines in them. And I have a song called Standing Stone that I wrote. I don't know, you may be familiar with it, but it's got 3 parts, and there's all of this. There's some really interesting dissonances, and the whole song, it's got 2 lines in it, but the whole song is about, and I wrote it for a threshold kind of, is about making a commitment to be there for someone. That's it. Because we find ourselves, Tamsin, in these situations where you can't make it go away. You can't change it. There's not enough money in the world you can throw at it to make it different. But what we can do is to make a commitment to be there no matter what. And that's what this song is about. And there's 3 parts in each part, and the music, the harmony part represents a different part of your resolve.
I see.
And so the piece is like that. And when I'm singing this in community, so that the people that are there, I've done this in big concerts, so that all the people in the audience sing the melody line. They can learn it in like 1-2 seconds. And I have them, as they feel so inclined, that they can rise or go to the place that makes them feel the most resolute. And I've done this with audiences of 2,500 people, and they're all up, or they're all rolled up into their wheelchairs right up to the front of the stage, or whatever it is, all singing this. And then the choir knows the harmonies. So I never teach it. I just sing it with people. Only the choir knows the harmonies, and they know when to come in. And so a lot of my threshold songs, each part represents a different part of your resolution. And so in Standing Stone, the melody is, I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. And that is the melody. And that represents the rooted part. I will stand by you. And then the next part, the highest part. And I don't bring in any of the parts until I'm sure everybody's on the same page on the melody. And until we're all well rooted. So a lot of my stuff is very three-dimensional on there's a lot of things going on. You're not just singing a line. So that's the I will stand by you. That's the one that's really rooted. Then when I bring the higher part in, that is the part that represents this. So you have I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. That's this part, like, don't even think. It's that like this. It's like, it's that full frontal, I am here. There's nothing you can do to make me go away. That's that part. So you have the rooted part, you have the in your face part. And then the last part, which is the lowest part, is everybody starts on the same note. Lowest part. I will be your standing stone. I will stand by you. So that is the lifting and the rising part. And there's all of this dissonance in there. And each layer adds another layer of dissonance. And then we end up like this. So it's this and by the time you get to it, and then part of the music is a gesture that at the very end, when all the parts are in the choir, have a gesture where you take your right hand and place it on the shoulder of the person next to you. Because this is different than putting your arm around like this. This means that I know you got it, I'm just giving you a little extra. Which is different than this, than putting your arm around somebody. This is like, I got you. And so you see all of these people doing that. And I've done that piece. Yeah, I did it. It was streamed internationally a few years ago for the United Religious Institute, and in the room with me were Muslims, Hindus, Catholics, Baptists, Unitarians, humanists, all kinds of folks, Sufi, all kinds of folks from all different spiritual and religious backgrounds could all sing that song. And that's what's important to me. So with my music as well, that there's a place for everyone at the table within that music.
That is a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
That is inclusive, and it's so sincere, and it's building on the theme of connection.
Exactly.
Again. And one of the things that attracts me in music is counterpoint, where the parts are moving independently, and then harmony is generated by this independent motion.
Yes.
And a lot of Western classical European tradition music includes very clever harmony, but it emphasizes the cleverness, whereas really well-written counterpoint, the harmony just comes about naturally, because each part stating its own identity and being resolute in that, but also interacting in a consonant and complementary fashion. And I feel there is a connection between the best of that and what you're speaking of.
Well, I tend to think of when I tell people, if I have those parts, I said, I want you to think of each part as being its own melody. In other words, you could sing the song you could sing it by itself, each melody by itself, and it's its own thing. And it becomes a different thing when you put them all together. So I sometimes don't think of things as being harmonies. I just think of them as being melodies coexisting at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so attractive to me, and again, so much in harmony with my own aesthetic goals. I should like to ask you about another of your pieces. I came across it today, and I loved it. It's called Lead with Love.
Oh, yeah.
And that seems to involve call and response style. And it also seems to involve a style of harmony in which the parts move in an almost parallel fashion, but not quite.
But not quite, yeah. So are you talking about the choral arrangement of it, or the...
That's right, the full part version?
Yes, from Hal Leonard and Exigence, that one?
That's the one?
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's funny because I did that with my students with the Minnesota All-State Choir. And it's interesting because that piece, the origins of it, the original piece of it was, the original song was written the day after the 2016 election here in the US, which is when I call him affectionately Cheeto Head, was selected, not elected. And so I was doing a residency in Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I was working with a middle school in both of those places, a high school in both of those towns, and then a professional choir. And I was doing my piece, Sanctuary, oddly enough. And anyway, the morning after the election, I was on my way to do rehearsal at the middle school in St. Paul, and St. Paul is the poorer, there's a lot of, it's like the poorer part of the Twin Cities, you know.
Right.
It's where, yeah. And so I was working, I went to the middle school there, and I was walking mostly Black kids, Latino kids, and some Hmong kids that there. A lot of Hmong folks and Somalis live in Minnesota for some reason. Right. But so I walked, and a couple of the Black kids stopped me before I went into the classroom, and they said, "Miss Melanie, does this mean we're going to be slaves again?" They were terrified. And so I said to them, "Babies, hold on now. We need to talk." And I said, "First of all, you need to know they're going to have to come through me to get to you. Second of all, there are more people with you than against you." And so I talked to them about the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, which happened in 2013 here in the United States. And that was here in the US, when you have an act, it has a 50-year like gestation period. Then they can, before they make it permanent into law, they can change it. And when that happened to be the year when the power shifted in the US. It's the second term of Obama, which happens all the time, to the Republicans in both houses. So when it came up for revision, they completely stripped it out of all of the safeguards that keep you from gerrymandering, which is why, I don't know if you saw, all this red all of a sudden appeared. And so I talked to them about that, and I talked to them about we have this stupid thing here called the Electoral College. Stupid. It's just, it should have been abolished. It was always based on race and class. And yeah, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so I explained to the kids about how that worked. And then I said, but what I want you to think about, I said, I want you to think about people like Mother Teresa or Gandhi or Dolores Huerta or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela. I said, all of these people started their movements out of the love of their people, not out of the hatred of someone else.
Right.
So, and I said, that's why you got to lead with love. So I finished my rehearsal with them. That night, same night, I was going to be the guest music person at a church in Edina. And Edina is the richest part of the entire state of Minnesota. They got more money than anybody there.
That's neat.
And their music director at their church was the assistant director of the professional choir that I was working with as part of this project. And his family was the only Black family in this church. So when we walked into rehearsal that night on that same day, they took one look at both of us and they started crying. They were so upset. They were just so upset by the election. And they were the first ones to sing Leave with Love, because I wrote it in between those two things. And the reason I wrote the song the way that it is, and people, first of all, it went completely viral. This song is sung all over the world now. Who knew? But people they were so excited. Oh, we wrote all these verses. And I said, no, you don't understand. This song is written so that anybody, no matter what their political affiliation is, what their trip is, anybody can sing this song. Anybody. It doesn't matter what, it's like, here we all are, we are in a crazy world. And, don't give up hope. Anybody can sing that. And so, my favorite verse is the one, I know you're scared and I'm scared too, but here I am right next to you. And when in the score, it says, do not teach the audience, just sing. It's in the score.
Right.
Don't stop and teach them, just start singing it and invite them to join in. And that's the whole point of that song, and people love it. And the kids that I did it with in Minnesota, they finally got the right groove for the verses and all of that with their response. Because normally it's just, you have a caller and you have a responder. And I love the harmony for the soprano part in the little counter. You gotta put 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot in front of the other one. At first they're like, wait, what? And then there's this real crunchy thing that happens in the low part. But that's the whole, to me, the crunchy parts is because I could tell a lot of folks that, life ain't always in a major key. It ain't always in a major key, and it's not always going to go the way that you think it's going to go. And you cannot be afraid of the dissonances. Because a lot of time in Western, we want to resolve things, or we want it to be these nice little triads and all of, but that's not how life is. Sometimes it is, but that's most of the time, that's not how it is. So even if you, there's these things that happen with that, with that 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, and it has all of this thing, ba, 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 ba. So you have that. So you have this it's like an exclamation, which it comes from. That thing is very much. It's in a lot of like the African American tradition. We have. If you go into a Black church and the preacher is preaching, people will talk back to him. They will go, yeah, I hear that. Yeah. So that is that. 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. That's what that is in that. That's that whole like, yeah, that's like, I hear you. What do you got to do? 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. And then the way in front of the other one. So you have, and then you have this big jump, but that's like somebody going, I hear you. What do you got to do? You got to put 1 foot, 1 foot. So it's all of that thing. So it's all, the whole piece is really very congregational in not only the call and response, but how where the accents are in that whole thing. Because it's like I hear you. What you got to do? You got to put 1 foot. It's that. So.
I love that. And again, it is inclusive and it builds connection because, as I say, from the Western choral tradition, it's all about we sing, you listen, and it's about distance. Whereas this is...
And that is completely opposite about what I do in any of my music. And in term and conducting and all that. And I have a thing that I get residencies with a lot of choirs and doing all that kind of stuff. And I have a couple of rules if you want me to be with your choir. First of all, the only paper should be the program. And normally they're like, wait, what do you say? I said, no, this in any part of the concert. And they're like, wait, what? I said, no, none of this, not having it. You want me? You got to do that. Okay. And then I always have a section of the concert that I call And the People Could Sing, where everybody in the concert hall sings, and not just once. There's a whole section of the concert, it might be 10 minutes of everybody singing together.
It's fabulous.
That's just the way it is.
I mean, you were talking about some of the mood that descended over the United States on that day in November 2016. One thing, though, that gives me hope for the long term is that hatred is a very lonely place because it is not exactly sterile, but hatred can only ever turn to something else. So when people unite for hatred, once they've accomplished their goal of excluding or even destroying a group of people, then they have to move on to each other eventually. And it is just a hopeless, bleak, hellish kind of place. Whereas love, inclusivity, acceptance, these are inherently attractive. This is an emotional place, a spiritual place where one wants to be. And I think even the most hateful person will eventually realize that there's nothing but loss in pursuing a path of hatred.
Yeah. You know, I have a piece from, it's from Sanctuary, and I got it. It was after I wrote the introduction. I think was it after this before it was after yet another Black person was killed in the United States, and I got a message on Facebook from someone I don't know who said, "I'm so terrified for my Black grandchildren. Would you write a lullaby?" And so it became part of Sanctuary. And the words are very simple. And the harmonies are really a trip. And it's just this lament. And it's what it is. I'll send you, I have I'll send you a recording of it, but it's the opening is this because I was doing a project. I was called to come and work with a bunch of folks in Humboldt County up here in California. And it was after yet another person was killed, another Black person was killed. And they called me up there and said, "You have to come." And so I did a community sing and some workshops up there, but I did some stick things. And I did one workshop with about 30 youth of color, age like 12 to 17. It was about 85 people. All the rest of them were police cadets and police chiefs. So all of these cops and all of these kids of color. And so it was not long after a policeman had killed an innocent Black man. It was not long after the man went into the nightclub in Florida and killed all those people. It was not long after in Dallas where a man had killed all of these policemen, just discriminately killing police. And the opening of the piece is called Somebody's Baby. And it came to me during that time because I thought, what if we think about, so the man that pulls the trigger, the cop that pulls the trigger and kills this innocent man has just killed somebody's baby, right? So you have that person mourning the loss of that baby. You have the mother of the cop who killed that other person is mourning the fact that their baby just killed someone else's baby. And that the man who goes into a nightclub is someone's baby who just killed somebody else's baby. So this is, and I talked to them about that. What if we thought about each other as somebody's baby? When I'm walking down the street here in my neighborhood and I see folks that are unhoused, I look at them and my first thought is that person was somebody's baby. Mm. And so it's that what happens when we stop looking at each other as human beings? And so the opening of this piece, I just did this with the kids too. It was just gorgeous. And the opening of it is somebody's baby just killed someone else's baby, leaving somebody's baby crying. When will it all end? And then the other part comes in, rock goodbye. Oh, it's just, but when will it all end?
Hello. Hi again. Right, so just to, I'll edit this together, but just to explain to anybody watching this video on my website, Zoom has a policy where it will cut you off after 40 minutes. And so I've had to divide this session into two halves. And so this is the second half. So you were talking about your song "Somebody's Baby."
Yeah.
It's always a bit awkward catching somebody, cutting somebody off in mid-flow. So if you're able to kind of pick up the thread again, thank you.
Yeah, well, you know that it goes into, it has that lament, and it's actually, there are two parts. There's somebody that you know, it's a two-part intro, and then the whole choir, the bass part comes in, and and like the whole piece is one of of let me see. I wonder if are we able to share screens? I think we are.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, let me look for something here,
Thank
and
you.
maybe I can show you a little bit of it. Um, I after George Floyd was lynched here in the United States,
Mm.
I did an a cappella. I don't know if you know if you're familiar with that um, application. I'll see if I can find it for you. Um, so you can just see a little bit of it with the intro and how the piece goes. Which so because we can do that on
Mhm.
this thing here, yeah. So yeah, it's really a lament. And when this person, let's see, let me look it up here in here. When this person asked me about writing a lullaby for her black grandchildren, this is the piece that came out. And so let me. It's just going to take me a bit here, but yeah. So I did this. I did somebody's baby with the high school choir. Because yeah, because for a number of reasons. First of all, because we were in Minnesota where it happened, where all of that happened. Let me see. It is called Somebody's Baby. Let me see if I can find it here. And so I felt it was really important to do the piece there. And I am a person who, in working with youth and with kids, I like to talk. I talk to them about true things.
Mm.
The music I write for children, which there's a lot of it out there, is not stupid because you know a lot of music that's written for kids is
Mm.
really stupid, and I just think it shouldn't be so. You know, it shouldn't be so. And so let me see if I can find it here.
Well, I mean, I think children understand a lot of things um,
Hmm.
instinctively, and they don't need to be patronized.
Exactly.
And they know when
Exactly.
they're patronizing you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, when I write music for them, I want to make sure that it's all very pertinent to them in their lives, because they know what's going on. You just have to write music in there. I'm just still searching here. I don't know. I just didn't. I forgot that I had this, and this way we could kind of do this. Um, but to write music that means something to them, that speaks to what's happening in their life and in their neighborhood and in their cities. Um, and so, doing this particular piece with my with this high school group in Minnesota from Minneapolis, and that I felt that it was really important because I have to have singing and music allows you to really to work through and to be in something in a way it's much more expansive in terms of you being able to absorb and understand,
Mm.
to try to understand, to make some sense out of all of this stuff. Okay, this is crazy. So all right, it's got to be in here somewhere, but it's all of those things, and I wonder. I think about music that I write and music in general as being medicine. And so when I'm working with folks, I talk to them about I want you to have this big, huge basket of song that you can look in and you go, okay, I think I might need a couple of those, or I might need this, and to understand that music is medicine. And I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day about how song and music is something that never leaves people. So I've been dealing with folks who are having cognitive issues, or folks that are dealing with dementia. The one thing that never goes away is the music because it's not connected. I was telling somebody it's not connected to this; it's connected to this,
Right.
and so that's the difference. I'm almost there. What's the name of this?
Okay,
Somebody's
no
baby.
hurry.
So, that's the difference. Someone else's baby, leaving somebody's baby crying. When will it all end? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, baby child. Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, baby child. Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I hold you? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I hold you? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I keep you safe? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I help you shine? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I hold you? Rock-a-bye, how can I close your sweet eyes? Rock-a-bye, baby child, save the world. Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, rock-a-bye, baby child. Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, how can I keep you safe? Rock-a-bye, baby child, close your sweet eyes. Rock-a-bye, rock-a-bye, baby. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That was beautiful. Really very, very beautiful indeed.
And that was my thought, was just, and it's a whole lament, and
Mm,
it's not what people think of as a lullaby, but it's a lament. And it is a lullaby. It's like, and when I was explaining to the kids when we were singing this, I said, I want you, for the bass part, which is the very first part, I said, I want you to think about that you're cradling. I said, not only you're cradling, but you are the one that's being cradled as well.
right.
So I did this whole thing and all this layers and all of these kids singing this and being the cradlers, being the cradled. And I said, the whole idea is this question, it's just this, you're looking at this being and you're wondering, this is a crazy world. And I
Mhm.
love you, but I don't know if I can protect you in it. And that's what that whole piece is about. And it's about that, it also has that whole feeling of, how even when you're a little kid, when you're feeling scared or something, you rock, you move.
Mhm.
So and it has that kind of emotion in it too. It has that kind of emotion that just, it has all of that in there. So that came out of that whole idea of why do we look at each other as being separate from each other?
Mm.
But if we think about, so all of that for me is about that connection. Whatever I write about is about that connection to get to that elemental organic place where we see each other.
Right.
And that's what's really important to me as a composer and songwriter.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. And the thing that really strikes me about that is that it is so full of compassion,
Mm-hmm.
compassion for everyone, because very often when we hear these terrible stories on news reports, a kind of vengeful emotion and an anger arises, but you're moving far beyond that and moving into compassion, which is so important towards the healing process. And it
Well, I
is
think the
fully,
first thing that we feel is that we bypass the very first thing that we feel is that, oh my gosh,
mm,
we bypass that. But if we stay in that place and understand that the difference between me and that person is nothing.
mm,
And Tamsin, all of this stuff comes out of people not feeling like they're connected and belonging to things. So for me, in my music and whatever it is that I'm doing and I'm writing, is that I want people to feel like they're a part of it.
right.
Because when people don't feel like they're seen or they're a part of something, that's when stuff gets crazy and weird.
Mm,
That's when you start killing people. That's when you walk into a church and you start killing people. Or you walk into a synagogue or whatever it is you is and whatever it is. Because that person feels like, oh, you don't see me? I'm gonna make you see me. You tell me I don't belong? Okay, I'm about to. And that's what it is. It's all based on not being seen, not being heard. And when that happens, because it is our human condition to want to be a part of something, whether it's good enough, whether it's good for us or not.
mm,
But everybody wants to be a part of something. And so we just have to provide spaces where what they're a part of is something that nourishes them on all levels. And that's what's really important. So that's my philosophy, Tam.
thank you. Thank you. I, all I can say is thank you for explaining that to me and for taking the time to help me to understand. Um, and I suppose ultimately, um, I feel a sense of, I feel two emotions about the future. Part of me is pessimistic because there is so much division, there is so much anger, there is so much concentration on what distinguishes us from other people. But ultimately, that just leads to loneliness and to desolation. But the better path and the path that makes me feel optimistic is precisely what you've just been describing, this recognition that we're all the same family, that we're all the same people. And when we see each other and embrace and enjoy each other, then greater connection, greater compassion, and greater enrichment is possible. And I think ultimately, people will choose that
Yeah,
because,
well, and that's the power that we have, the gifts that we have of making music, is that is the place that you can bring people in. And I always say, look, my job as a composer and a singer and a musician and a conductor is to make sure that there's a seat for everybody at the table. Their job is to sit their behinds down in the chair. But we just got to make sure it's there. And my whole thing also is that the only qualification that you have to have in order to sit in that chair is you got to be breathing, which means that we have to be accepting of people's differences,
mm,
differences of opinion. And you know how we have this thing in the United States called the melting pot, which I just think is ridiculous. Because here's how I think about humanity, Tamsin. I think, okay, there's this big, beautiful pot. When I look in there, I want to be able to recognize the carrots and the peas from the chicken and the potatoes. I want to be able to see that beautiful difference. It's the gravy that holds us together. I
right.
don't I don't want to be a slurry. I don't want to look in there and just see
Mm,
this mishmash because what makes us beautiful is our differences.
Right.
What makes us connected is our similarities, as are those basic things. And so that's to me, that's the gravy in the pot, but I want to be able to see all the beautiful, I want to be able to see all the different ingredients in the pot. I don't want it to be all
Excellent.
mishmashed together. And so that's the beauty of humanity. And my thing is that why do we want to make spirit or God small by saying, I got a bit of it, and if you follow my way, you're right. You got to give
Mm,
spirit credit for making, all whatever your thing is, all angels, all deities, all ever that look like all of us. If you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at an image of spirit. I don't care what anybody says. The spirit looks like you. That's it. And so, why would we want to diminish spirit by saying it can only be this one thing or that thing?
mm.
And that pretty much goes throughout all the stuff that I do.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome, my
very
dear.
much for that. Just to finish off with, I mean,
Yeah.
could you perhaps tell me a little bit more about your future plans and projects, and what are your long-term goals? And yeah, I think that
Well,
that's it.
yeah. Well, I am back on the road again. I've got a lot of residencies coming up with different choirs around, and I can't remember the name of it, but I have been commissioned to write a piece for an organization in the UK.
Right,
Yes, for it's for the network of community singing choirs. I don't remember the name of so many other things, but
right,
a wonderful Frances. What's her last name? Anyway, so they had commissioned I believe four Black American composers and four, I think, Black English composers to
right.
write music. So I've been commissioned to write a piece. So I'm doing that. Um, I've got, oh Lord, I'm working with so many different groups. Um, I'm working with threshold choirs, so I'm doing some work with bedside singing folks. I'm working with some professional choirs here in the U.S., community choirs, children, and I'm doing a residency at a Unitarian church in Seattle where I'll go once a weekend to be with them, to help them establish a music community within their church. So I have all of that happening, and I was very fortunate this last year to get my third Grammy nomination um, as part of a group called All One Tribe Collective, and it's all songs written by Black songwriters for children. So it's called
It's,
All One Tribe Collective. So you might
it's
want to,
fantastic.
yeah. So that's really really good, and I'm hoping this year to record. Um, and it will be called Bright Blue Sky, and that's songs of solace, and I forgot what the other word is, but it's all songs that I've written um, just to help people be able to get through these times because we're all in a state of shock. We got to remember that we're dealing with loss and change, and people who say, "Well, I'll be glad when things get back to normal." Well, that ship has sailed.
Mm.
It's a new world, and song and music can help us cope with change.
And we will.
Absolutely.
But,
We're resilient. Now we got to love up on the planet big time.
mm,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of faith and hope in the younger
Oh,
generations.
yeah.
They're really switched on to social justice. They're really switched on to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the younger generation will resolve the problems that currently prevail. And even though we are going to go through some very painful shocks in the coming
Yeah.
decades, I think the future of humanity is bright. And I only wish that I could be around to see it.
Yeah. And if and it all gets it's our basic thing about understanding that everybody, is valuable. And I always say, we come into the world, every single being comes into the world completely worthy 100%. And then the world gets in the way.
Mm.
And we forget. And when you forget that you're worthy, that's when things get weird.
Mm,
So, that's what we just have to remember.
thank you.
That's it.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you,
ever
Tam.
so much.
You're welcome.
It's been inspiring and very, very thought provoking, and it's been emotion provoking. And I'm really very, very grateful to you. And
Thank you.
I hope that your
Let's
future
stay in
plans.
touch. Let's stay in touch for sure.
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome, my dear. Take care.
Thank you very much. Okay, have a great day.
You
Okay,
too. Bless
thanks.
your bones.
Bye. Okay, bye
Bye.
now.